immigration, retrogression, navigating the Visa Bulletin, all of the fun things that everybody wants to know about. And I am joined today by another one of my colleagues, Elizabeth. She's our Director of Immigration, and she's going to share some really good information with us about this. I know you guys have all the questions, so make sure you're posting them in the chat. At the end of Elizabeth's segment, we're going to have a live Q&A, and we'll try to get to all your questions. If we do not get to your individual question, no worries. You can reach out to your associate, or your associate will contact you to make sure we try to get your questions answered, because I know every single person's journey is kind of like a fingerprint. You all have your own paths. Not everyone follows the exact same path. So make sure you're posting your questions. And without further ado, I'm going to let Elizabeth take the mic and share some great wisdom with us about the Visa Bulletin and retrogression.
Thank you, Erica. Yes, as Erica said, I'm Elizabeth. I'm the Associate Director of Immigration and Licensing, and I get to speak to you today about the fun, challenging immigration process. And one of the bigger immigration challenges that we are facing right now is what is called retrogression. I'm sure as someone who is seeking to immigrate to the U.S., I'm sure that you've heard the term retrogression, but what does it really mean? It's a term that's thrown around, so I want to make sure that we're all clear on what retrogression actually means. The U.S. has an annual limit on the number of immigrant visas or green cards that can be issued each year. This limit is broken down by visa category as well as the applicant's country of birth. Now, visa retrogression occurs when the immigrant applications exceed the number of visas that are available, that the U.S. government has available to issue. And that is what causes a backlog that we call retrogression. And so how do you know if you're retrogressed? This is going to be determined by a few factors, including visa category, like I said, and your country of birth. And the big one is your priority date. A priority date is your place in line, essentially, for the immigrant visa. It's determined by the date that USCIS receives your immigrant petition, or the I-140 immigrant petition, and the ETA 9089, that for our registered nurses. For other occupations, such as medical technologists, it will be the date that the ETA 9089 is submitted to the DOL. Our registered nurses and our medical technologists have a slightly different path in the green card process, but ultimately the same type of applications and petitions that are filed. For both, the priority date is locked in and it belongs to you when USCIS approves the I-140 immigrant petition. You will then use this priority date to see how retrogressed your wait is in reference with the Visa Bulletin, and I will show you that momentarily. As I briefly mentioned, part of the visa allocation is based on the applicant's country of birth. The one exception is called cross-chargeability. Cross-chargeability allows an applicant to use the country of birth of their spouse if that spouse is born in a country that is not retrogressed or not as retrogressed. For example, if you were born in India, but you marry someone who was born in Canada, you may use your spouse's Canadian country of birth as yours in order to complete the green card process sooner. It's important to understand, though, the distinction between country of birth and country of citizenship or country of domicile. For immigrant purposes, we're looking at your country of birth, regardless of what your current citizenship is. And so now we're going to move on to the Visa Bulletin. This chart, and you can see on the screen, this is the Visa Bulletin. This chart is the one you're going to want to familiarize yourself with, as it's a guiding document to seeing your place in line. Of course, we here at Health Carousel are constantly monitoring the Visa Bulletin. So you don't need to, do your own, you can of course do your own research, but if you have no if you're not sure what you're looking at or how to read the Visa Bulletin, we are constantly monitoring that, and we're happy to help. But as you can see, it's broken down into the employment-based categories. So if you were to go to Google and you type in the Visa Bulletin for the current month, it's on the Department of State website. There's a bunch of different charts. So you want to scroll all the way down to where it says employment-based. There's family-based at the top. There's 2 charts related to family-based, and then there's 2 employment-based charts. For our traditional path to the green card is considered a consular process, and that chart is the one you want to reference is the chart A, which is the final action dates. And for our medical technologists and our registered nurses, you're typically going to be what is called employment-based third visa category. And then you want to reference your country of birth, or if you come from a country like India that is listed on there specifically, you can see the priority date is very far and you're married to someone from another country or who was born in a different country, say Canada, for example, then you would reference the all chargeability column for your priority date. If your priority date that is on your I-140 petition is before the date on that chart, that means you are current and you are able to proceed with the final stop process, which is the embassy interview for your green card. If your date is after that date, that means you have to, you're retrogressed, and then you continue to wait until your date advances to being current. The Visa Bulletin is issued once a month, and the chart for the next month is typically available by the middle of the current month. So for example, November's Visa Bulletin was issued at the end of last week. We're still in the month of October, so those who are current in October, you're still looking at October's dates until November 1st, and then we switch to the November 1st Visa Bulletin. For those who are constantly checking the Visa Bulletin on their own, you'll see that the dates did not advance from October to November, but they did advance from September to October. And so why is that? The government's fiscal year runs from October 1st to September 30th. And so on October 1st, the government received their new allowed immigrant visas they can issue. In September, they were running out because that was the end of their year. And so it's pretty common to see retrogression get a little bit deeper in the later portion of the summer, and then in October, the Visa Bulletin will typically advance to some level. And that is because of the way the government's fiscal year runs and the availability of visas to issue. So what does it mean if you don't have a priority date yet, or your priority date is after the cutoff and you are retrogressed? First, if you don't have a priority date, you can still obtain a priority date and get yourself in line for the green card. USCIS continues to process I-140 petitions. Once you have that I-140 approved and you've secured your priority date, then it does become a waiting game. Once the I-140 has been approved by USCIS, they'll send the petition to the National Visa Center. The National Visa Center will either issue what's called a not processing notice, or they'll issue fee bills depending on how retrogressed you are. This will also be the time where you'll be asked to gather additional documentation regarding your background and history, and eventually you'll complete the DS-260 application, and that's going to require extensive history regarding your past employment, past addresses, and places that you've lived and worked. So gathering that information, knowing ahead of time so that you can gather that information while you're in the waiting process, will reduce the burden to you when it comes time for you to complete that DS-260. So while you're waiting, you want to be gathering the civil documents that you'll need. You'll want to be, compiling all the addresses that you've lived in the past 10 years, places that you've worked, so that when it's time to move on to the next steps, you're ready. Additionally, you'll continue to work with our team on licensing requirements for the states that you are going to be, you expect to be working in, any passing the English exam if you haven't done that yet, and other credentialing related items, as well as interviewing at our client facilities so that you can secure your U.S. client assignment, so that when your priority date becomes current and you're called for an interview, your application is complete, you have that U.S. job offer, and you are ready to attend your interview. The compiling of civil documents and background information will also be required for family members immigrating with you, such as spouse or child or your children. So family members, we encourage you to bring your family with you. In some instances, they might need to come at a little later date. You can have your family members accompany you, which means they're going to attend that embassy interview with you at the same time, and then they'll receive their immigrant visa at the same time as you. Or if they're not able to come for whatever reason, you can also do what is called a follow to join, which means you will attend your embassy interview, get your immigrant visa, come to the U.S., and your family will then come at a later date that is convenient for them and for yourself. But that does come with a risk, because if your priority date subsequently retrogresses, then your family will have to wait until your priority date becomes current. So then they could end up taking a little longer to get here than you originally hoped, because that priority date will still come into play if your family members don't join you and come at a separate time. You'll still have to continue to monitor the Visa Bulletin to ensure that they are then eligible to attend an embassy interview. So realistic expectations, really, it's realistic to expect that this is going to be a long journey. There's always something to be done in the pursuit of coming to America, though, like I talked about, compiling your civil documents, compiling all the background information that you're going to need to provide on your DS-260. And two really important ones that you can do while you're waiting is to continue to work and gain experience, and to practice your English, so that when you are interviewing, you're confident, you have the experience, so that you can nail your U.S. interviews. And then when you get to the U.S., you're proficient in your English, and you can just jump right in and ready to go. Finally, a big question that I get asked a lot is, can we speed up retrogression? Is there anything that we can do to speed up retrogression? Unfortunately, the answer is no. As I said earlier, the U.S. is only allowed to issue so many immigrant visas per year, and that's going to be broken down by visa category. And then on top of that is each country only has a certain allotted amount that can be issued within the larger lump sum. So there's no expedite process available for the green card process. The only part of the process that can be expedited is the I-140 petition. The I-140 petition step is where the priority date is secured, like I said, and it can be filed via premium processing, which provides a response on that petition within 15 calendar days. There may be occasions where you would not want to premium process your I-140, and that's where we would have discussions with you about that. Typically, we'll see no advantage to premium processing if you have a child that is approaching the age of 21. In immigrant purposes, a child that is 21 or older can no longer accompany you as your dependent child. So premium processing, and if you have a child in that age range, you would want to reach out and let us know so that we can discuss whether premium processing would be advantageous to you. And it's important to note that premium processing isn't going to impact your priority date. It secures, it gets the I-140 approved a lot quicker. and which then secures that priority date. But the priority date is based on the date that it was filed, not the date that it was approved. So that is the only step in the immigrant process that can be expedited. Everything else is a waiting game, but there are lots of things that you can do while you're waiting to be ready for your embassy interview and coming to the U.S. And, you know, it can be a long process, and at times it can be very stressful, but it's ultimately worth it in the end when you make it to America.
Elizabeth, that was such good information. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your wisdom and knowledge here. One of the things that I just want to note from Elizabeth and everything that she shared, and I hope you guys pick up on this as you're hearing us talk today, all of our other colleagues as well, is that we truly care about you individually. So each of you, like I mentioned when she got started, just has a different journey. Everybody has a different journey they're following. Depends on the country that you were born in, if you're bringing family, if you're not, you know, when your date was filed, how quickly you were able to obtain some of your documents, and pass your exams and all of that. So every single person is different. And you know, we do have the full circle of support here at Health Carousel International. You will have an associate every single step of the way that's dedicated to each portion of your process in helping you successfully get to the next one until you get to America. And, you know, a lot of the questions that I've been seeing come through in the chat, I feel for you. My heart goes out when retrogression is in place. I know it's easy to get fatigued. I call it retrogression fatigue. You know, it's easy to get this kind of fatigue that sets in where you're like, you just feel like all hope is lost and what do I do now? And I want to assure you that retrogression is very, very normal. Many of you may not have experienced it before, especially if you recently joined our program. But I started with Health Carousel over 11 years ago. And when I started here, we were in a state of retrogression for the Philippines, for the rest of the world, for India, for China, for most of the countries. And that's just very normal. That's how the United States government regulates the amount of visas that are being used per country that have been allotted per category. And that's just how they manage it. And so I know that it feels negative and I know that it can feel discouraging, but we have never abandon any of our nurses during any time of retrogression. So we're here to help you and encourage you and keep your hope up during those times. And like Elizabeth said, there's so many things you can be doing while you're waiting. I know it's hard. I'm an impatient person. I think most people are impatient by nature. You know, we want what we want now, right? Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to expedite you getting here quicker. What you can do for yourself is, like she said, making sure that you're, you know, passing the exams you need to pass, getting the credentialing documents that we need, having everything ready in advance and being prepared is really important. You know, particularly if you get down to the point where you are documentarily qualified by the NVC and your embassy interview could be scheduled. Maybe your date is retrogressed, but the next month, if the Visa Bulletin comes out and your date becomes current, you want to be ready to go. Because if you don't have your documents prepared and your date becomes current, it could retrogress the following month. So it's really important. And I know that that can be a little bit stressful, but that is something to be thinking about, is making sure that you're prepared in advance. You've got your documents together, you've got your credentials together, and you're working on those. So no need to get discouraged. You know, I have seen nurses who have waited sometimes for 10 or 15 years to get to the United States. And I don't want to say that that's going to be you. I don't predict that at all. I think that it will move much quicker for you. But we have literally waited with nurses who maybe were from countries where there wasn't visa availability, and we waited with them until they successfully got to the United States. So we will be here to hold your hand through the process. And so don't give up. Before we jump into more immigration questions, Adishola, you asked a question about Nursing Career Week. You are eligible being an international nurse, so please go ahead and register and sign up for that. Let's see here. Ifioma asked a question. Elizabeth, I'm going to let you answer this. Is priority date and the date of documentarily qualified a benchmark for having an interview date, or is it only the priority date that's a determinant factor? Did you understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, they kind of both play a role. Of course, priority date, you need to have a current priority date in order to even go to the embassy interview. So what's going to happen when your priority date becomes current, and you're documentarily qualified? It's kind of like first in, first out with the documentarily qualified date. So you do want to achieve that benchmark as quickly as possible after your I-140 has been approved. Once your I-140 is approved, the USCIS, the Citizenship and Immigration Services, is going to send everything over to the National Visa Center. And then when your priority date becomes current, then the National Visa Center is going to send it over, all of your documents, your petition, all your paperwork, over to the embassy that you indicated that you wanted to attend your interview at. And then they will be, reviewing everything and looking at that documentarily qualified date as well in order to then get you scheduled for an interview.
So it's both. And if you're on, the call today and you haven't had your visa petition filed yet, I can't stress the importance of getting us your documents so we can file your visa petition. That's really important because that is your place in line. Your priority date is your place in line, and you won't lose your place in line no matter how far retrogress things get. So it's really important to get us the documents and let us get your visa petition filed. Let's see here. Sam Jana had a good question. So they want to know, suppose the priority date is May 30th, 2023. What does that mean? Like, how do I understand what that means for me if that's my priority date? How do I know based on the Visa Bulletin if I'm current or not current?
Yes, so you will look at that Visa Bulletin, and you're going to look at your visa category, which for a registered nurse is going to be EB3. So the third preference category on the employment-based chart for chart A, final action date. And then you're going to find your country of birth. So if you were born in the Philippines, if you were born in India, if you were born in Mexico, and if you were born in China, those are specifically listed out. And then there is that other category that says all chargeability. So if you were born in any country other than China, India, Mexico, or the Philippines, that will be the category that you would want to look at. And then you're going to look at EB3, country of birth, and there's going to be a date there. It's in date, month, year order. And so then you would want to see if your date aligns with that date or where it falls, if it falls before that date or after that date. If it falls before the date listed on that chart, then you would be what is considered current. If it falls after that date, then you would be considered retrogressed.
Yes, that's a good one. All right, Stephen wants to know, looking at the current trends in the bulletin, is there any hope for progress in the priority dates in the coming months? And Stephen, I wish we had an answer for this. I do. It's like probably the number one question we get, especially if you've already got your priority date and you're like, but I'm retrogressed. Unfortunately, we work with some of the top experts in the industry. We're partnered with folks that have even worked for the US Department of State and things like that, who have knowledge about this kind of thing, but yet no one can predict what's going to happen, right? We're not connected with the US government, so we can't know what they're going to do next month or the month after, unfortunately. The one thing that I kind of count on, though, and that I know to be true by looking at data from the last couple of decades, is that the US always issues the amount of visas that they've allotted every single year. So there's 140,000 visas that are for the skilled worker class, and they always issue all of them. So it's not that it's going to be held back. And I don't want you to worry about the administration. We've got a big election coming up. We're not really concerned about that. The visas will continue to be issued. It's just that there's a lot of people like you that want to come to the United States right now and that are taking their NCLEX, which is awesome. It's a historic moment in time. I've never seen so many people taking and passing NCLEX from countries, all over the world. We have over 120. We probably have candidates from over 120 different countries in our pipeline right now. And that's incredible. I love that. But that means there's more people trying to get the visas, right? So it just backs up the line a little bit more. So there is hope. There absolutely is hope. It just might take a little bit longer than you initially expected. And that's okay. Like Elizabeth said, keep getting your work experience, and keep practicing your English if you struggle a little bit with your English speaking skills. That is going to be the most important thing for you to be successful. And maybe this is the time you have to focus on that and invest in yourself to make sure that you're investing in your career so that you can transition to practice well when you do get here. Oh, Juan Carlo, I love that. I will not give up. I trust Health Carousel and Passport USA. Thank you. And I appreciate that. And I trust them as well. Like I said, I've worked here for 11 years and I've never seen us abandon a nurse in a time of retrogression. And the majority of the time I've worked here, it has been in retrogression. So, we had some visas freed up after COVID. There were some unused ones. And so it made things current for a little bit. And I think it tricked everyone's minds like, oh, it's going to stay current. But like I said, there's so many people trying to get here right now, which is an exciting time. But that's what retrogression is about. It's just the US kind of regulating the amount of people that are coming in. Red, let's see here. My daughter's place of birth is not the Philippines, but she's a Filipino citizen. Which date will we be looking at? Elizabeth, do you want to take that one? That's a good one.
Yes, that is a good question. So the priority date is going to be based on the applicant's place of birth. So the primary applicant, which would be our registered nurse, which would be you, and then your spouse and your children are considered dependent applicants. So the primary applicant is the country of birth that will be looked at. The only difference in what the cross-chargeability is referring to is if the spouse is born in a different country, not the children. So that's the distinction there. If you have a spouse that was born in a different country, then you can use their country of birth. Otherwise, it will be your country of birth that you'll be using.
Awesome. All right, great. Thank you, Elizabeth. So unfortunately, we have run up on time. We've actually gone 41 minutes over what we were planning to do for this live broadcast, but I love that because that means you guys have been interactive. We've had a great audience today. Lots of questions and so much great information. A lot of my colleagues had to jump off because they had other meetings to join. But I was so excited to have subject matter experts here from a lot of our different teams. And we're going to continue to do these monthly. I think these are extremely helpful. So continue to send questions in about things you want to know more about. I appreciate the feedback on the states. We'll make sure we highlight some different states as well. And obviously, you guys are always going to have immigration questions. So we'll have Elizabeth back on to join us for more information about immigration in the Visa Bulletin. If we did not get to your specific question, please be sure to contact your IDA or your IPA to ask them if you have an immigration question, and we'll make sure we get that answered. Because again, some of your questions are very specific to your own journey in your case. So we'll make sure that we answer those as well. But it was so wonderful to see everyone on today and see all the different countries represented. I do hope that everyone has a great evening or day wherever you're at in the world. And we will see you guys the next time. Bye.